Warning, this podcast typically features spoilers and strong opinions. Proceed with caution. Hello and welcome back to a new episode of Two Grooms, One Plot, the podcast where two lifelong storytellers who are married talk about stories. I'm Pavi Proczko, audiobook narrator, etc.
And I am Colin Funk, childhood development expert and teaching artist.
And today we're going to be talking about Anatomy of a Fall.
I forgot the title for a second. I was like, you got it.
So relatively new film, French film.
It came out last year, technically.
Yeah, last year because it was up for Oscars.
It got some following on streaming, though.
Yes, yeah.
Especially this year.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's on Hulu right now. So
it's a buzz. A buzz about it. So
we're going to talk more about that and dive into that interesting story. But first, let's do our moment of the week.
Let's do it.
Great. I'm going to go first. Okay. I have been playing a game that I think a lot of people played like earlier when it came out. A friend of ours did. It's called Hades.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And you play as...
just playing that now?
Yeah.
I feel like we talked about that a long time ago.
Yeah, our friend talked about it like a million years ago. It was during the pandemic, and he did his presentation for we did like a birthday PowerPoint birthday for someone.
Because that's what you do.
Because that's what you do when you're Zooming.
Zoom.
So a friend of ours had pressed us to put together PowerPoints for her birthday, and he did about Zagreus, this particular mythological character, the son of Zeus. But anyway, point is,
my PowerPoint presentation, a self-plug, is essentially the Legally Blonde episode. So
episode 3
watch that.
of this podcast, which at the time was called In a Moment, and now is called Two Grooms, One Plot. Spoiler.
That's not a spoiler.
I guess if you started here and you did it, never mind. Okay.
That's not how spoilers work.
Video game, Hades. So it's from the same studio that did Bastion and Transistor. And so it's like a top-down kind of roguelike game where you go from like room to room and you beat up monsters and you level up and get new treasures and things. And this one is interesting because you are designed to die. Because you are Zagreus, the son of Hades, and you're trying to get out of Hades' house, the house of Hades. And so you're trying to climb up through Tartarus and get all the way back to the surface to meet up with your Olympian family. But the whole idea is Hades is you're not getting out of here. And so you try to go and you try to get as far into the gauntlet as you can. And then when you die, you just end up back home with all of your, and you're just well, I'm back home and I'll try again, Dad. You just wait. And that sounds like it would be really frustrating.
Yeah.
But what I want to talk about is what happened when I got through the first boss. Because the first boss is, Meg, what's in Hercules?
Megara?
Yes. Megara is actually one of the Furies. Mm-hmm. In Hercules, of course, it's not one of the Furies.
She's not.
But that character is your first boss before you get out of Tartarus and you're the next level.
Got it.
And you make this relationship with this person because you meet up with her and basically you're designed to fail many times. But then once you finally kill her and then you die, you end up, point is, I killed her, got through, and then 2 rooms later died. Very frustrating. And now I'm back home. But the thing is, they keep you coming because they keep you coming back and wanting to go back out because every time you come home, you can talk to anybody who's in the house and you learn more about your past and more about the story. So it's the first time I came back after defeating Megara, she was there and she had things to tell me. And I was like,
so do you still have to defeat her again though?
You do.
Okay.
You do. You have to go back through and do the whole thing again. But every time you meet up with someone, everything you've done has happened. So it's we're here again. Let's do it.
Using the cyclical time
to tell the story, though. So it's you find out
part of those stories.
Yeah.
Is that they're part of like a
They all have cycles.
cyclical, ongoing story.
Yeah. So it was very interesting that it was like, I expected to be much more frustrated about having to like get all the way through to room 20 and then come back and be like, shoot, I have to do all that again. But like seeing Megara there and being able to like give her a gift and get like a treasure from her, just you get to keep building out your arsenal and the information you know.
It's nice that it's like a device that works for both the storytelling and gameplay.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, you're enriching the story, but also making that like cyclical. I mean, because most video games, you know, you die, you start over. Like it's very
You start at the last save point. Here, you're not starting at the last save point. You literally start at. I mean, there is a save point, but it's
plenty of games that you don't start at the save point.
That's true. That's true.
And this is a device that makes that tolerable.
Yeah,
it like more than tolerable.
Yeah, it gives a little bit simpler, more hack and slash feel of like Majora's Mask, the Zelda game where you got to like do for anyone who doesn't know, you repeat the same 3 days over and over again.
That game is good.
It's really good, and it sounds like it'd be really frustrating, but it's really interesting to be like have to read.
Sometimes.
It is, well, yeah, but in a good way.
So, yeah, sure. That's, I mean, yes, it's challenging. It's an interesting challenge, and it makes you. It's really cool puzzles, especially with the time because they like whip that together real quick.
Yeah, they didn't have the time to like produce a new game, so they just used basically all the characters from Ocarina of Time and put them in a different world, and then created this new thing.
Do that more though.
It just made them. Those constraints made them create a game that they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise.
But we also love those characters already.
Yeah.
So why not just reuse like.
My gosh, that character again, and in this world, they're doing this job. It's so interesting.
Yeah, we could talk about that. Maybe we'll talk about.
Not a bad idea.
Those two together is a really interesting.
Not a bad idea.
I love those two games.
So then the last thing I want to point out is that like as a narrator, I usually do like the lit RPG games, and I think this would be a really good device in a lit RPG book.
Got it.
Where you like. That cyclicality, but is part of it. But you're
telling secrets. You're gonna give it away.
Unfold the story as you come back. So
what if someone else steals that idea?
No, it's mine. It's my idea. Boom. I've already written it. It's copywritten. No, but yeah, I just think it's like a really good, clever idea.
All right, I guess it's my turn.
Yeah.
I also have a moment. Yes, I do. Because, and this goes to show how meaningful moments can be. This was like, you sent me literally like a 10-second clip of, it's of the Birdcage.
Yes. Nathan
Maybe
Lane,
the best movie of all time.
Robin Williams.
Very, very good. Great movie. Full of moments, but like this, but again, like just that like 10-second clip is enough. Like it's a full story and moment in that 10 seconds. It is one of my favorite parts of the movie where like they've decided, I won't go over the whole plot of the movie, but essentially Robin Williams, his character is teaching Nathan Lane, his character, how to act straight. They're a gay married couple. They're deciding that they need to make Nathan Lane straighter.
Yeah.
So he's like teaching him how to do it. And he's like, they're at a restaurant and he's telling him how to like put mustard on his toast. He's like, you don't dribble it, you spread it.
Smear it. Yeah, you smear.
And he's like,
grip it like this. Put that pinky down.
The toast.
I pierced the toast.
And so he's like, he's getting hysterical over these like little tasks that Robin Williams is giving him. And they're both so good in it. It's a moment that like, it tells so many stories, and it just is like such a great example of playing a character that is so extreme without being a caricature. Because Nathan Lane is like essentially doing this like stereotypical gay man, but doing it with enough like grounding, and especially their relationship.
Yeah,
Robin Williams and Nathan Lane both are so incredible in that, like, because there's so much reality and groundedness and like a good solid relationship built there. Like it's not overplayed. It just like it's a struggle and it's real.
Yeah.
And it's very funny and it's amazing. But it stood out to me. The reason I want to talk about it is because it's funny. It's exactly why memes work so well, is because you could take these moments and it tells so many stories. Like we can apply it to different scenarios. Mm-hmm. The one specifically in the meme, it was like the subtitle was teaching your Gen Z workers the simplest task, whatever. And it's like this like overreaction to this. These like very simple, like smearing mustard on it and like having this like huge hysterical reaction to it.
As if like Robin Williams is like the millennial teaching the Nathan Lane Gen Z how to like butter their toast.
/ Gen X teaching Gen Z's a simple task at work.
Yeah.
And it's just like and as someone who works with lots of Gen Z people, I work with lots of younger people. I just saw like I can, just like with Nathan Lane, I can have grace and I can see the humanity in them. But sometimes I'm like, this is kind of ridiculous. sometimes the reaction to these simple tasks, I'm like, oh, this reaction is not, I don't understand. Mm-hmm. I can smile and be patient and we'll all be happy and fine. But sometimes I'm like, oh, we're different. And that it resonated. Watching that scene again, I was like, oh my God, that's sometimes what it feels like.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because like Nathan Lane is trying.
Right.
He just is like so wildly out of his
just
comfort
out of
zone
his element.
And doesn't know how to regulate himself. And sometimes that's just like Gen Z has a hard time doing that.
Yeah.
It's just a different generation, which is good in some ways, but also
can be very annoying.
Challenge.
Yeah. I appreciated the meme, which is why I sent it to you, and
it made me
because
laugh
of
so hard.
all of the things that
Because it's
we've talked about.
And yes,
it's
the
Birdcage, a favorite film, and the generational differences that we talk about from your work, and
it made so much sense, and I loved it.
It's good, but it's
power
how
of
moments.
A moment.
Yeah, the power of the moment. How it speaks across generations and across time and. These moments are universal. They're like when you like break it down to its irreducible essence, what it's about, and that's like why moments and art and stories work. It's great.
Yeah,
to bring it down and make it serious. I've pierced the toast. It's good. Watch that movie. It's really freaking good.
Have we done that?
No.
We can do that.
Okay. Your birthday's coming up, so
I know. That is definitely a possible birthday option for sure. I love that movie.
Wonderful.
Anyway.
Great.
Those
are our moments?
Those are our moments.
Great. Let's move on. It's Anatomy of a Fall. Yeah. Switch hit synopsis. Let's do it.
Yeah, we can keep this brief.
Yes, I think so. Because there's not a whole lot happen. Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Big things happen, but the plot is quite short.
Yeah,
or at least
the events. There's not like a lot of events.
So there's a college professor, author, and his author wife, and their son, who has suffered some sort of accident making blind. They're in the French Alps, where the father husband has grown up, and they've kind of in this retreat for a bit.
Now he's French and she's German. And so they speak English at home.
Yes.
Except for their son, who speaks only French.
Only French, yeah. But she's a little bit discontented, perhaps, but mysteriously the father husband has suffered a fall from the third floor of their chalet and has died
pretty early.
And the son finds him.
Yes.
They call the police, and basically because of some blood splatter, the wife gets indicted for murder.
Yes.
And then we watch the court case around that. And so we see how
both the court case and like the kind of like
the investigation and how
at home, and how it kind of affects
her relationship with the family,
with the son specifically.
Yes. So how the son is affected, how the mother and that relationship is affected.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see. And then, so we watched the trial play out, and it's because it's really about the process of like dissecting what happened, and digging
into motive and digging into like what,
it's really about these, especially these lawyers and the people like telling, like spinning the stories, seeing which story is the most
like potent, the most can be thought of as the most true by the jury.
I mean, I don't. Okay, so I mean, disclaimer.
Okay. I'm not sure anything about the French law. I didn't look anything
like
about
a trial.
Yeah, I don't know what French law is like.
And watching it made it very clear that I really didn't understand it, and it is very different. And I would be curious to talk to someone who actually knows anything about the French court system,
because it is like not Law and Order. Like if you've seen any procedural or any U.S. based law thing.
If you watched the Johnny Depp trial,
this was right. This was very foreign,
very, very different the way it played out.
Yes, and it really was about they were able to just spin these stories and spin these motives and kind of infer a lot of thought, like really like a lot of mind reading going on with all these people.
With the U.S. courts, they like shut that down pretty quick.
Yeah.
So it's. I'm wondering if that is common in French courts, or if it was also an anomaly. You know what I mean?
Was that unique to this, or?
That's questionable.
Yeah.
I mean, because even like, I guess like even a good lawyer in the U.S. will be able to do that in a very structured way. You still have to tell a story.
Right.
You still have to tell a convincing story to a jury.
Right.
That's generally what's happening.
Right.
The U.S. court system, as I know, has like very strict rules to make sure you have very strict boundaries, so you're not making things up, or you're not
catching people in.
People are susceptible to stories as well.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful about the information, what you give, how you give it, because you can't just like infer that. Or you can't imply that something is true or something happened. Or you can't like.
It's like there's the rules of kind of engagement. It's like there are only specific instances where you can ask leading questions. You have to, hearsay is not allowed. Like there's like lots of weird things that just like apparently in this particular court case. That was not a problem.
Right. And so it does seem like in the French court system, there is a different structure.
Yes.
I'm not sure what the differences are.
Yeah.
I just know that like there are things that I'm like, that would have been shut down. No, they wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, this was very confusing.
Or that's a bad judge to have let that happen. Either way.
So we're watching like this German author kind of endure this.
Yeah, because they're both authors.
Right.
The husband and the wife are both authors.
Yeah, but it was just notable that this, like, she was German and getting kind of...
Yeah. I just want to clarify because I think it was mentioned before that the husband was an author. But.
Yeah, but the husband was French. But so they're like indicting this German woman who's maybe not...
Who also has to do this in her second language.
Yeah.
Or in a third language,
A third language, because she ends up doing it in English, a lot
English
of it. Yeah.
Well.
Right. So they end up letting her do that, I guess.
They try. She does a lot of the trial in French.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, it's mostly English.
Right.
They kind of ease up on that for sure.
Yeah. And then it all seems to fall to the boy.
Right.
Where the son essentially, like, it seems like in like the pinnacle climax moment, the son has to decide whether what he thinks is most likely. Was it more likely that his mother killed his father or that his father committed suicide? Because that's kind of the two opposing stories that we're getting.
So essentially it gets down to the son kind of deciding because it's like there's some of it rests on his testimony.
Yeah.
Of course we don't know.
I'm not entirely sure how evidence works there, but that essentially there's like a bit of the testimony that was like, it was really important some of his testimony and where he was when he heard certain things.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't see anything, and like whether he was in one place or
Right.
another
And he gets
mattered.
information wrong, like he gets like stuff wrong at one point, and so they're like, "Oh, how can we even trust you?" And then
When new information is revealed that they had a fight the day before that he didn't know anything about, they bring him back to testify one more time, basically to give his opinion about like what he thought was more likely.
But I think he went to the judge and he's like, I have more information.
Yeah.
I have a other story that I didn't tell you about.
Yes.
And it was like, essentially there's two more stories that he ends up like kind of coming up with that flesh out both what the mom said and just like this picture of the husband and his potential depression and mental state just in general.
Right. Right. And so then he sides with the mom. She is acquitted. And that is the film.
And that's the film. And it kind of ends there.
It ends.
It kind of like leaves us
with an acquittal.
Kind of hanging.
Yeah.
Like we do see she goes back to the house.
Yeah.
She has like a short moment with the son. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of like, it's like very bittersweet.
Yeah. Where it's like you really get a sense that the world is different. I mean, of course it's different. The father's dead, but like, they'll never be the same. Like really gone through the gauntlet here.
It's very interesting, those stories that are like, it kind of ends up where it's like not, the big thing doesn't happen. Like she doesn't go to jail.
Right. Yeah.
Like that's not that, but like, and so ostensibly like it should be returning to normal, but like aside from the dad dying, like you said, it feels like the world is just different. And it's like, those are very interesting stories, I think, to me, where it's like you kind of start where you kind of end where you started. Yeah. But everything is different.
Well, you've been like laying bare, right? So it's like everybody, you get, like I think about from like the son's perspective, he has to hear all of these testimonies that he learns all these things about his parents. He learns even just fathoming the possibility that his mother could have killed his father. Mm-hmm. That these are people capable of doing this thing.
Not to mention he has a whole little experiment.
Right. And then from his perspective and from any of the adults' perspectives, that he poisons his dog as a part of an experiment, not in order to hurt the dog, but he needs to see how the reaction is because of a thing that happened in the past that clarifies why, like that clarifies and gives credence to his story.
To clarify, like he gave the dog pills, gave the dog aspirin because there was the dad at one point like threw up a bunch and the mom was like, oh, I think he had taken a lot of pills and that's why he threw up, but we never talked about it.
And I think he tried to kill himself by taking a lot of pills.
The son was like, yeah, no one talked about it, but I remember it. And he has this like moment where like hearing that story, he remembers
his dog acting really weird.
The dog was acting really weird after that thing happened. And he's like, oh, maybe... And he smelled like vomit. So it's like maybe he ate the vomit and ate pills. And so I have to see if the dog taking the pills
does this thing. Yeah.
So that would clue me in.
Right.
To like that my dad would have attempted.
Right. Right.
Something in the past. Like, again, none of this is like hard evidence.
Yeah. None of it's definitive, but it is, he's like, well, that story actually makes sense because my dog behaved like it had taken a lot of poison. And I know that because I just poisoned my dog and saw how it behaved.
Right. It's like those stories.
Very upsetting.
I mean, like, those are the kind of things that I do think in U.S. courts, they could bring evidence like that to because I think it's strongest. I mean, the thing that I think is not used enough in courts, like reasonable doubt, is I always get very frustrated, and I don't watch like a lot of like real trials. Yeah. So I don't know how often reasonable doubt is like really pushed. Yeah. But like my whole, like I've always thought, I've never been called in for jury duty. I don't know why. But if I was ever called in and if I was ever on a jury, I would just like be really stingy about it.
Yeah.
I'd be like, no, there's still a reasonable doubt that that person did not do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There, like but there's no evidence linking that weapon to that person. Just because they all exist doesn't mean like,
right.
I would be very, very, you'd have to convince me pretty hard.
Yeah. And that's kind of how it's supposed to be designed. It's supposed to be hard to do in the American court system, which is notably not how it is in this film.
It does not seem
because
to be
there's like so many instances where the prosecution is like bringing up all of these, I don't know, the incidental facts that exist. And it's like, well, that she could have hit him on the head and thrown him off the third floor balcony. And in the American court system, it's like there's a reasonable doubt that would have happened though, because he's like a big heavy man. The railing was really high.
Tall,
she would have had a lot of trouble pushing him off anyway. She would have had to like really get the leverage to do it. It's just like she could have maybe done it, but there is a reasonable doubt. And that's how that works, right? Like in the American court system. And so it's interesting.
Well, plus there was still evidence. They because the other side brought in an expert, because that was like based on blood splatter.
Right.
So they were like, the blood splatter tells us it could have been this.
Right.
And the other side brought in their own expert, of course, did lots of testing. We saw some of the testing.
Yeah.
It was grotesque.
Right.
Dropping dummies off of the blood splatter could have easily happened from a fall from the attic and not a push from the third floor.
Right.
And like the angles worked out the same, like, and it was like, that's a possibility. And this is one of the things that like frustrated. It was like, while this person was giving testimony, the opposing lawyer kept butting in.
Yeah.
And kept being like, but it's not impossible that other thing happened, right? She's like, correct. I didn't say it was. I said, from my expert opinion, it's very improbable.
Yeah.
I can't say anything. Like, of course it's possible. Sure.
Just the fact that the prosecution can like interrupt like that during a testimony and, like, in that way.
It too.
Yeah.
It's like badgering. There's like, I kept being like, that's badgering.
That's badgering.
Leading. That's, like there's so many things that I know what like these terms are, and I'm watching and I'm like, so that I think that's part of I think that's part of why it is so enthralling to a US audience specifically. Yeah. Because it is so different. Yeah. And I think it incites a lot of feelings.
It does. It's really frustrating. Like it's
very
extremely frustrating to watch.
Yes.
And it because you just want to like shake them and it's like that fear, and it's like sometimes, because
in the end, I'll even clarify, we don't actually know
whether she did
or not.
No,
we never
I have
find out.
no idea. Yeah.
And that's not the story. We don't find out whether or not it happens.
Right.
That's not what the story is.
Right.
I mean, like, I think there's something interesting about watching court cases and how they, like, what they do to dissect all the information.
Yeah.
I mean, it's called Anatomy of a Fall. We're looking at like the pieces of it, and it's like, we're not just breaking down technically what could have happened and like what happened during that day. It's not just the
literal fall. It's like everything leading up to it. It's everything in the periphery.
It's not just, it's also the mental states of the people. Like it's also the stories that were being told and the relationships and the lives being led up to that moment that created the fall. Cause it's not just, it's the story is beyond, because the blood splatter's enough for me.
Yeah.
To be like, there's reasonable doubt.
Reasonable
I'm done.
doubt.
There's nothing else I need to know.
Yeah.
You have no more evidence than that.
There's no murder weapon, and there's two equally likely, maybe not even equally likely.
Be a murder weapon if she had done it.
Right.
And they didn't have anything.
Right.
I'm like, that'd be pretty difficult to.
Yeah.
I know it's easy to get rid of a murder weapon, but like,
if you don't like,
you'd need a big heavy metal something.
right.
And she would have had to like push him. Well, I don't know. It was
It's just like a lot.
so
There's
easy
a lot.
for me. I'm like, that's enough for me to be like, I'm done. There's nothing I need to hear that would like,
Right.
there's no story at that point. If there's discrepancies, the stories, those would only add to the reasonable doubt. They would never add
Right.
to the belief that she would have done it for me.
Yeah. The idea that like, well,
hearsay,
it's not impossible that you couldn't have done it.
It doesn't matter.
It's like, no, but that's not the way, that's not our thinking in how that works. Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah. So we're watching, the breakdown of what happens. We're watching people decide whether or not they believe it. People acting on like, she at the very least was, consistently like very, blunt. She was very,
Very German.
very direct. Yes, very German.
Yeah.
To the lawyer, the investigators, and said things that I'm like, you could be painting a picture at least a little bit.
Yeah, and she doesn't really at all. She's like,
doesn't.
it's all just.
There are like questions that the lawyer asks, and she's like, no, that's not really a thing. Like, no, he didn't usually lean out the window. No, he wouldn't have leaned out to call for us. No, he didn't do that. No, he wouldn't have blasted. Like, him blasting the music wasn't weird that day. He usually did that. No, like all these things that could have been like, yeah, it was weird. It felt weird. Like all these
she
things.
could have painted a different picture to like make it so much more likely that he was behaving strangely.
Like it almost seemed like it was inconvenient. She's like, unfortunately, that's not true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't tell you that that's true.
Right.
Because there are those things that like, you listen to those things and you're like, oh, you're not helping yourself. And
Yeah.
because, that's another thing that the US does. They're like, don't say the real thing.
Yeah. We're going to coach you. Yeah.
Not until we tell you what to say.
Yeah.
We're going to decide what to say.
Yes.
Because it's going to be very carefully crafted.
Yeah.
And they really don't do that here.
Yeah.
Which like is very interesting. It makes for more interesting storytelling.
It makes for a really dramatic theater in the court in a way that like
It makes me want to throw up.
U.S. courts are very boring.
Good.
For real, I want the more boring one for real. Because this was too much like back talk. Like it was cross talk the whole time.
I was like, shut up.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, they're allowed.
They're clearly allowed to just like interrupt. And,
and there's something about that that's interesting.
There's something very interesting about that.
Sometimes it'd be nice to be like, I need to interrupt because that is not what you said.
Right. Yes, there are times where I'm like, and it's not going to have nearly as much impact if I have to wait until tomorrow when I cross-examine them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's, by design, it is to be frustrating, but like.
Yes.
But still, it's like sometimes there are things that are more useful, but it obviously can be taken advantage of because you see like this, it really the whole time feels like that prosecutor's like flailing. He's just like trying to get any little bit
confident.
Yes. Yeah.
He's a bully. But I'm sure that has worked. It seems like it works for him in that context.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so why not act like that?
Right.
It's similar to, we're often reminded in courts that both sides, they aren't looking, they're just arguing their side.
Yeah.
This is not a debate where you make concessions.
Right. Yeah.
You're not coming to an agreed understanding. Not like there's just one person this is the side that I am vehemently defending.
Yeah.
Both sides are doing it.
Yeah.
And that's what their jobs are.
And they are ignoring inconvenient evidence.
They have to.
Yeah. They have to try to point in other directions.
Yes. And they have to misdirect. They have to, and like part of it's like the emotional tactic of the prosecutor to be like, to act like things are like, that doesn't mean anything. Like to just like act like that himself is, it seems, I mean, it's a tactic. It's a tactic to get other people on your side.
Right.
Well, it's not convincing him. Why would it convince me?
Right. Only an idiot would think that.
Yeah. Especially when you're talking that confidently and that like, I mean, I think it is like,
it's gross. It's gross. It's really reprehensible.
Really like,
debate behavior.
I'm like,
and like generally, not to get too high on the horse, but there is something like really discomforting about like prosecution generally, like the idea that their one job, at least here in the States, and it seems in France too, but the job is to get the conviction, not to find the most true conviction. Right. They've just already decided that's the conviction I'm going to get.
They're not right.
And so even if like they have to really either suspend disbelief or find some way to believe the thing that they're doing, because like if I was in that position to be like, well, I can't actually continue with this prosecution because I know that there's too much reasonable doubt. I have reasonable doubt about this thing. Like, how am I supposed to keep going to get this conviction?
I wonder how often that happens in real life, where they hit a place and they're like, we've come up against enough evidence and we'd like to drop the case.
Yeah.
I just wonder how often that happens.
Right.
Or is their job just like based on
we just do it,
which is horrible.
I mean, like, can be.
I understand that like we don't want to just like let a bunch of people off because like we want to be punishing criminals, I guess, but
we don't need to just get someone to convict. We need to put someone behind bars. It's like, yeah, but you need to put the right person behind bars.
Yeah, but I'd rather no one going behind bars than having the wrong person behind bars. You know, that's what my thought is, and that's why I'm very vehement about reasonable doubt.
Right.
Because you need to be pretty sure.
Yeah. Because that's a heavy weight, man.
Especially with like a murder case, especially like, you know what I mean? Like you're like, I'm not that sure, so I'm only going to give you a little bit of jail time. Like, no, you can't. No, that's not how that works. No, it's all or nothing. And if you're not convinced all the way, that means it's nothing.
Right. Notably, this film obviously brought up a lot of feelings.
Yes, it did. Really.
I was just like,
just like
screaming at the TV.
Seriously. I mean, yeah. And the way, I think it told the story in a very interesting way. I mean, again, the title it's a very French title.
Yeah. Anatomie of a folle.
Anatomie d'un chute.
D'un chute. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
But it I mean, like, it really is like you're really breaking down, you're really seeing pieces of it. You're breaking it down, and the way they're telling the story is fragmented. Mm-hmm. And you get like a little piece here and a little piece there. And then
you find out about the arguments and the affairs and
does that, it brings us through a little journey about like, what do we feel? Like, of course, like it's asking us to do the same thing, to consider all of those things. I generally have like that, like I kept having to remind myself, I'm like, she could have done it.
Yeah.
She still, even in the end, she could have done it.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong with knowing how I think the court case should go.
Right.
Because of the evidence that they put forth, not because of what actually happened between them.
Right.
Do I think she should have been convicted if she was guilty? Not if they didn't do their due diligence and get all the evidence that they needed.
Right. It's like the film does a really good job of putting us in this privileged position of feeling like we're on the jury.
Yeah.
But also giving us the insight into the private lives a little bit.
Right.
Which of course skews things, but it's interesting that that is how it feels. Like, so much of the film is the court case that it feels like we, in those moments especially, we're actually on the jury.
You know what was really interesting? Speaking of that, is I didn't think, I'm sure I've watched a lot of Law and Order, not recently, so it's not like fresh on my brain, but like we see a lot of, there's an interesting dynamic that happens when the son is going to testify, because that means they want to restrict the communication between mom and son.
Right.
Which sets up a very interesting dynamic. And I'm like, I don't know if you could actually legally do that in the US. I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah.
I do not know.
Yeah. Anybody know? Let us know.
Like the state could take over if they thought she was
like a danger.
And so if he didn't have but he would have had a different guardian that would have, like, they like appointed someone to like just like go and hang out.
Yeah,
I was like, that can't be real. I mean, maybe it isn't where they were in France. Yeah. But like
some like au pair
I don't think
police officer or something
happened in the US. Like they might have had somebody there, but like they would have put him with a different caregiver.
Right. Yeah.
Or
he's got to live with grandma for a minute.
Not like, we're going to send this woman home with both of you.
Yeah. And you're just going to like live in the same house and you just have to speak French all the time and you can't talk about the case.
Wild.
I'm like, that's like a lot of leeway.
But you watch it and you watch how there's like interactions, because of course people aren't perfect. The interactions between that person and the son, or that like, when the mom was like pretty good about following the rules, but there's a couple times where like
she
because
speaks
of the
English
relationship with she speaks English. She was not supposed to speak English.
Yeah.
But she's like concerned about other things.
Yeah.
And I'm sure concerned about the trial as well.
Of
but
course.
like the son at one point was like, I would like you not to be here tonight. I want to spend the night alone.
Yeah.
And that's when he does that experiment with the dog.
Yeah.
And that's why he does that. But it's like very odd and very jarring. And
the mother's like,
are you sure?
Are you sure? Can we talk about this?
Like,
Yeah.
I'm your mother. Like, I don't want to just leave you alone with this stranger.
Right.
And that makes me nervous for so many reasons.
Yeah.
She's very reasonable about it. Doesn't like harp on it. Like, listens to the son and does it. Like, she does leave.
Yeah.
But she has this moment like of, hey, I would like to talk to you about it.
Right.
And he doesn't say anything back to her, so she gets the hint. But like, there was like that interaction. If they were more strict about it, could have been a big
problem,
a big deal.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they were human about it. You know what I mean? Like that's like where the wiggle room makes
sense. But it's like, I feel like it would be safer just to eliminate the opportunity for the error.
Right.
Like you just like have to make it foolproof.
Or just say like, he can't testify then. Yeah. Because like, we don't know what kind of influence
anybody has, including that
or
woman, or
especially since he's already had some inconsistent testimony.
Because he's
a child,
impaired vision, and
just went through a traumatic
experience and is now like trying to remember where he was doing what
without visual memory. Like it's
difficult.
Not that easy.
No, it's hard with perfectly working eyes. It's already hard.
Yeah. And he wasn't like planning to memorize what happened that day.
Right.
You know what I mean? It wasn't like, so it just made for interesting, like behind the scenes, like, oh, where does like the perfectly laid plans, where do they kind of break down?
Yeah.
And how can that, like the breakdown of those like very strict rules, because they also let him watch like
the news and like interviews that
like
are
very
commentary,
strong
editorial opinion. Yeah.
I was like, don't turn that off.
Yeah.
Stop letting him watch that.
Right.
Don't let him get influenced by these news people.
Yeah.
That was very interesting to just see how the public and how the news is taking the stories and spinning the stories.
Yeah. Because we don't see very much of just like the general public, really.
No, because just that moment is that's it.
Pretty much.
We don't like think about, I mean, like there's like moments like where they, after the trial, they see her like asking pictures with the press. But like other than that, we're not really seeing it. So to see that kind of, that picture of well, these are the stories that are interesting, and that's why we're telling these stories. Like the news is just about stories.
Right.
We just want an interesting story.
Right.
Like they even said, like, well, I don't know. I think it's a more interesting story that she killed him and not that he killed himself.
Right.
It's much more boring if a teacher kills himself than a
And I was like, well, that's exactly why I'm like inclined to disbelieve the murder story because I'm like, well, we just want it to be interesting.
Right. And so it's interesting, and how it makes us ask the question, like, what are the things, like how easily it is to tell a story, to believe a story, and when it's hurtful, when it's helpful, and it's not easy,
right?
Because in the end, we kind of like with the son, we find out that the storytelling is what, like speaking of like this relationship with this person who is like watching the son to make sure he's not influenced by the mother. He, at one point, like asks for her help. Like, what do I do? What am I supposed to believe? Am I supposed to just like make up a story? And she kind of says, she's like, well, you just have to decide which side sounds true to you. Yeah. And so he's like, so I have to lie to myself about part of it. Like, so
I have to just pretend like I believe. I have to pretend like I believe. No, like, no, you decide. It's different. And I'm like, oh, that's supremely frustrating. Oh my God.
Also, I don't think it's different.
No, that's not different.
Deciding and pretending.
Not different.
No, you do you
fake it till you make it.
You have to kind of actively make, if you're writing the story, you kind of have to actively make the choice. Yeah. To be like, yeah, I know these things, but I'm not thinking about them.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense. I have to ignore that bit because it doesn't conform with my reality here.
Yeah, because life is messy. Mm-hmm. Life is not going to have perfect information. You are not going to have all the evidence. Right. Never. Right. In your own life. So when we still have to create stories. The stories of our lives to ourselves, when we're making like those identities, those pieces of ourselves, when we do those things, like we have to weed things out. Yeah. It just is part of it. And that is a very hard lesson for the child to learn, but it's also freeing. It also allows for him to, instead of getting so caught up in, I mean, again, that's the nice thing about the court system where we're like, yes, you have to do this or this because it lets you be a one-track mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to decide. I'm not looking for the truth. I'm deciding which of these
but you don't even have to. You don't have to decide.
The winner, right?
You just have to, you're assigned a role.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just play the role.
You have to do it. And you have to like find every piece of evidence and everything that would align with your side. Yeah. Because things aren't perfect, there will be things that will
go both ways.
You're never like, unless we have like video evidence that is clear. Right. We have to be telling stories. We have to take the pieces of what we have and figure out which is the most compelling story. Yeah. I think like that. And because of the looser, it seems, structure in the French court system, it allows us to like expand on what is pulled into the story. Right. Yeah. Because
they pull in like her writing.
Yeah. They pull quotes from her
book about some character that's talking about the ideation of murder. And then it's like out of context. And it's like, this is obviously proof that she's thought of doing it. They like play the recording.
Also, there's interviews saying that she brings her own life into the stories.
So obviously her own life in the stories, she's ideating murder. Clearly she must have done it. Even just the way that they are able to they play the full recording. Because the father, it turns out, has been
like grasping at straws at that point.
Yes,
that
it
is
does.
Wild.
It's really, really crazy.
That to me is like very desperate.
Yeah,
I'd see that and I'd be like, "You're looking to her books. Yes, that's a compelling story. Yeah, that like some of these things like could be applied to this situation, and we could look at it through that lens, and that's compelling.
Yeah,
it is, but
it's grasping at straws.
You don't have evidence, so you're like going to her old books to like speculate on her state of mind, and being like, that's what she was feeling, and that's why she did it. That's wild.
Yeah, and the thing that makes that, I mean, again, it's very frustrating because we have that sensibility that we're like, that's not how that works. But in the context of the film, it's like, is that going to work? Is he going to get the conviction because of that? Are they going to not? What? They're allowing that? They're even allowing that to stand?
Yeah.
And then they play the recording because the father's been recording moments of his life because he's maybe perhaps been inspired by his wife. That's like how they decide the story that the defense spins. He was inspired by his wife's successes in her books by bringing her life into it. So in an attempt to try to generate ideas from his own life, he's been recording audio from his life, and either just happened to record an argument or instigated an argument with his wife in his depression. And like the story that they spin, like the prosecution spins on that, is like, it's just, we also have the benefit of seeing like a reenactment of it. So we get to see the actors like actually acting.
Yes.
So that changes, that helps us. But I'm like, just hearing the recording of that argument, I'm like, that man is severely depressed.
Yes.
He is crying for help.
Yes.
And she's obviously not hearing it, and she is hurt, and so she's like pushing back. But like, this is not like a jilted, jealous lover or a husband who's like hurt by her infidelities.
I mean, a little bit.
He is, but that's a piece of it. But it's not like, you know, he's a strong man trying to take back what's his, and she kills him for it. Was like the story that the prosecution created. I'm like, oh my God, that is not at all the story that I saw at all.
Right.
And it's hearing that, like trying to have this prosecutor try to put that story in my brain.
The prosecutor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And having I just saw that thing. Like, I know what I think. And now what you think is really like bashing against it. And
but it's like, it's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary hearing the arguments, because it's like the challenge to the story that you're telling yourself, the story that I've told myself. I watched that whole argument. I'm like, I'm kind of on her side almost 100%. Not that like there's no sides to arguments, but like she is being so like overly rational probably.
Yeah.
And that's
probably
a big reason why
he's dysregulating.
Disconnect.
Yeah.
He's dysregulated. He's emotional, and she's like very matter of fact.
Yeah.
And it's like clear that they're disconnecting.
Yeah.
But he's like telling these stories. He's like bringing up these things that I'm like, you're just like making that up though.
Yeah. And she's like, that's not really what's going on. And you should do the thing you want to do. What do you? Yeah, do it, please.
And like maybe not taking the credit to be like, I can see how like my behavior or my thing like might make that hard, or you might think that I want this, but it's not. Like, and it's like if there's things, blah, blah, blah. There's like a way to have this conversation, right? Where I'm not saying she's like in the right in the conversation. There's no like in the right, in the wrong. It's just like, I'm watching and I'm like, there's nothing that I see that she's doing that I feel like it's like particularly manipulative or it is. So I'm like, I have this strong, like you said, the strong idea of what I think the interpretation of that interaction is. And the first time we see it, I think it's new. It's not I think it's not the recording that they were talking about. I thought it was like an older recording that may prove something else.
Yeah.
So like that because I just like,
it was a little
especially
confusing.
As it started,
I
was like, oh, it really seems like he's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
And that like she might be kind of like kind of tough love.
Yeah.
But she's choosing him. She's loving him. She's staying with him. That's like a question. Like, how do I prove that it was difficult, but I was choosing this and I did love him? Like, how do I do that? How do I prove that? That is like a very interesting question.
Yeah.
When, you know, like the pieces of evidence that you have are telling one piece of a story.
Right.
And anyone who's in any sort of long-term relationship knows you can pull pieces from relationships that make it look horrible.
Yeah. I mean, she says that it's like when the worst therapist in the history of therapists goes up to like testify on the prosecution's behalf. It's like the husband's therapist. And he's a quack, but she's like,
I would write off that
testimony immediately. Yeah, it was horrible. But it's just, he tells this story about how he's like this hurt man and she's a horrible like harpy. And she's like, yeah, if I had a therapist and brought him here to talk about things, I'm sure that he could make my husband look horrible too.
Yeah.
That's not
Also,
what relationships
came
are.
Home and talked badly about you too.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing right now?
Yeah. Like what do you what is this?
Like it's just like such a cliche, like bad therapist blaming the partner for the problems of the person in the therapy.
Yeah.
That's a horrible therapist.
Yeah, really bad.
I'm like, wow,
I think it's probably like
good.
the least believable part of the film was probably that. I don't know what therapy is like in France, and of course there are bad therapists, but it was like, or maybe he got paid. You know, it could have been like, I don't know, maybe there's something to that where he gets like paid to be a witness, but like that was probably like the least believable bit for me. That I'm like,
I would understand if somebody was like feeling like was professional probably in therapy, but like gets to that place and is like, well, my interpretation is like, it was bad at home and she was doing these things and there was a lot of pressure from her and and from my understanding, like it didn't seem like he felt like this except for in this relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like there's pieces of it that I like understand, but the way it happened, I was like,
I just like any therapist worth their salt would give that caveat where it'd be like, I don't know this other person. I am only getting his side and only what he chooses to tell me.
I mean, that he would have any strong opinion of her is wild.
Yeah.
Because he has to know that people make up stuff about other people.
Well, any strong opinion that he could rely on. He might have an opinion. I can imagine therapists getting attached to their patients. You know, you end up feeling for them, but it's just...
But
like,
you have to know.
I know that that's not at all the person. I don't know that person. I have no one.
That's very scary.
Yeah.
Like, especially as an expert witness, to not be able to at least say, look, I don't know all the evidence. Obviously, people come in, they can say whatever they want.
Yeah.
I'm not working on evidence-based interactions. I'm working on just what he's telling me and his state of mind.
Right.
But from that, I gather this. And yes, some of this could be fabricated.
Yeah. Right.
But my expert opinion is this. Like, if he can't even just like give that the caveat, just like you said, like if you can't have both, you can have both. We're humans. We're going to have an emotional reaction to something. Like, we're going to have our thoughts about things and our opinions and our judgments and our feelings about all of these things.
Yeah.
But this should be a place where you can at least discuss the side of it that could be wrong.
Yeah.
You need to be able to, especially as a therapist, two, especially in a court case.
Yeah.
In a trial, you need to be able to, just like that one woman who's a blood splatter expert was like, yeah, it's not impossible. I'm saying it's improbable.
Yeah.
I can't say it's impossible.
Right.
That's not how this works. And that's exactly what every expert should be saying.
Right.
Just like the other blood splatter expert should also say, yes, falling from the roof is possible.
Right.
I think it's improbable because of blah.
Right. Maybe. Right.
Maybe. I don't know. But it should like,
if you're telling me you're certain,
should be
Yeah.
No, you shouldn't be certain. And especially you're hearing another, you're like, yeah, we did, like we have videos
We
and
also,
studies.
yeah,
and, like,
we also
can
did
show
a test
you
and
that there's obvious other, like, how can you say that that would have been an interesting thing is like if they could have had
crosstalk.
Yes. Let's talk to them. Let's have them talk to each other. Like have them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Before we get to ratings,
Yeah.
I have a storytelling question.
Yes. And I have all the answers. So perfect.
Great. It's who is the protagonist of the story?
It's got to be the mom. It has to be.
See, that's what it has to, right? Because like this is like who we're following.
Yeah.
I can't identify what big decision she makes before the end of the story.
Okay.
And I wonder if it's because I've been going back and forth between like saying it's the mom. It's clearly the mom, right? It's got to be, right? But the person that really like makes the game time decision is the son. The son is the one that makes like the big decision at the end.
Yeah.
And the son is the one that finds the body, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? It's like there's obviously an arc for the son. Whether he's like the global protagonist is like, that's kind of what I'm trying to decide. His story is more surface, right? We actually get to see that decision. We don't really see very much of her doing anything. It's like almost everything internal.
It is. Yes. I mean, it's all internal for sure.
And
I mean, it's something to do, like it has to be around, like it has to be within I thought there was some sort of I expected some sort of celebration.
yeah.
I think it's in that moment where it's like, it's something in there where it's like,
because at the end she wins and she's like, I expected to win something.
Expected
to get something, a prize. And because like when you, if we were to fail, it would have been the worst of the worst. I would be going to jail. And now we won, but I don't get anything for it. And it's still just terrible.
And it's still just terrible. I think there's something in that realization, there's like the choices around both, because there's something going on with the lawyer. That's part of it. There's some sort of like tension, there's like a relationship that like maybe happened in the past that maybe didn't come to fruition, but there's still a relationship there.
Yeah.
That like it's kept professional throughout the movie, but it's like there's real human.
Yeah. Palpable tension.
Yes. And so choosing, I don't know, the relationship there and the relationship with her son.
Yeah.
I think it's like how she's because like, again, this is kind of what I was, we were talking about in the beginning about it being a story where the end is the same as the beginning, but the world's changed.
Yeah.
And the world is the change. Obviously the world has changed a ton for the son.
Of course.
But I think it is more happens to the son almost.
Yeah.
Like there's more, like he learns more. He does but that's not, I don't think that's the story. I think the story is like all of these things can happen and the story and just because they happen, the world is different.
Yeah.
Like that, she's able to maintain her innocence. And it's still not enough.
Yeah.
Or it's still not good.
Yeah.
I think that was like the biggest, I don't know, for me, felt more of the story than the son making that choice.
Yeah. Like there's like a fundamental misunderstanding that she has about the world. It's like in there where it's that idea, like when I win, I get something for winning. Things are good at the end.
Her she's essentially like, you have to tell the truth.
Yeah.
If
you tell the truth, you will win and you will get a prize.
Husband.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is this.
Yeah.
There's no room for sort of like emotional hand holding.
Yeah.
With the husband. She's like very firm on truth and fact.
Yeah.
And there's like a coldness and a directness
Yeah.
to her worldview that is apparent throughout.
Yeah.
She doesn't get that emotional.
Yeah.
She does.
On
She
her
does
own,
get
yeah.
emotional.
Right.
And they're like, but like, it seems to be like part of it, like that we brought up earlier, is like that mindset, that very direct, well, this is what happened. This is what I tell you that happened. This is the truth. I can't deviate from that.
Yeah.
Has struggles coming up with like stories
Yeah.
that might show that he was depressed or suicidal.
Yeah.
And it's so, she like brings it up, and it's like, so it's like almost weird to like hear her kind of be like, it could have been like, I thought about it, but we never talked about it.
Yeah.
So it could have been. It feels really weird and
Yeah.
strange.
Because she's not sure about it. So she's like, I don't even know if I should be bringing this up.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure.
Right.
I only want to bring up the things I'm sure about, which
Right.
is I didn't kill him.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like that kind of not just the world around her changes,
Yeah.
but kind of like, it's not even that I didn't win because it was the right thing to happen.
Right.
And I think that like the
Yeah.
shakeup of the worldview.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think that's interesting. That's well put. There's the like using the idea of the fundamental misunderstanding to really like kind of like identify who, like that's where the story lives, in that misunderstanding. Mm-hmm. She thinks that, you know, she should have won because it was the truth, but that's not why she won.
Right. Right. I think she thinks that's what it should have been. Easy. She was like, I didn't think that I would be indicted.
Right.
I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't,
Yeah.
I don't have,
It's like, why didn't you tell me about the argument? Because I didn't think we would be here. It didn't matter. Like, it wasn't relevant.
I didn't tell you everything. Yes, I have arguments with my husband.
Right. Right.
She does lie about having a bruise on her arm.
Yeah, she
But
does.
like, I also get it. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
people like, who isn't going to be scared in that situation?
Right.
And try
Well, I
to
thought that it would
minimize.
make me look bad. That's why I didn't tell you about that
Whether
argument.
or not you were guilty, you're
Right.
going to be like, oh, that's going to look bad.
Yeah. Again,
I didn't hide it.
telling stories, right? It's like,
Yes.
that story is going to be a bad story. I'm not going to tell that story.
Right.
Like, not realizing she does anyway.
Right.
She tells stories too.
She tells stories too, even though she doesn't think, she's not immune to it.
Right.
Not that she's like vehemently against it necessarily. She's not like,
No, but
it's not that, that is not, I like that it's not like, we're not hit on the head with
No, yeah.
kind of plot.
Right.
But I do, that is my interpretation of like her, it just like works really well, especially with the relationship between her and her husband.
Yeah.
And how matter of fact she is in kind of every conversation that she has.
yeah. Well, that's a story too, right? It's like
Yeah.
that's the thing, that it's like
is also a
you think you're
story.
not telling stories, but you
But
are also,
even in the bluntness and the, no, I'm sticking with the truth. You're like, yeah, but the truth is
yeah.
it's nothing's the truth. I don't know. Like the truth
Yeah.
is very flexible.
Yeah. We are subjective creatures.
What do they
We
say
don't know.
in Paul Morreale? The truth is what two people agree on.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Which, you know,
Kinda.
that's
I
kind
mean,
of
it's like the best we can do, essentially.
Yeah, essentially. But it's interesting. So I think that is, I mean, like we're looking at truth versus story. That's like seems very,
Yeah.
and you know, with the son, we're looking at like what story you watch him understand that like building stories is like building truth for yourself.
Yeah.
But even that isn't the change of the world.
Right. Right. It's interesting. I think it's easy to fall into a trap, especially for me, like looking at film and television, where these visual mediums that we expect to see a lot of decisions happen. And even though
Right.
instinctive, like my intuition tells me she's the protagonist. That's where it all happens, but not being able to really identify kind of like, well, what's the thing she does? What's the dragon she slays, you know, for lack of a better analogy. And it's like, it's
just
all internal and we don't get to see it.
Right.
We also don't have to see it to understand that it's happened.
Right.
And that's really interesting.
Yes. I think it feels very clear to me that it's her.
Yeah, it's her.
I mean, like we see the dragon more clearly than what she does to fight it. And it feels like the son defeats the dragon, but he's not defeating the dragon.
Right.
He like get rid of a problem.
Right. Right.
But that's kind of like, that's not where she starts.
Right.
She doesn't start being like, I need to be let go of this murder. She starts like talking to this reporter and clearly like a little bit lonely and happy in her life.
Yeah.
In the decisions and the things that she's gotten caught up in.
Right.
And the choices that she's made in her life and the stories and like that's where it starts.
Yeah.
I don't think it's nice that it's used as a device in the, like we revisit that later. They bring that reporter back.
Yeah.
They bring it up in court and it's like a very interesting look at, because it happened the same day.
Right.
But it not only is like interesting for the court case, but it's not necessarily about the court case. It is like really good exposition in like her state of mind and what's going on with her.
Right. Yeah. Well,
because
you had crossed your fingers to remember something. Do you remember what it is?
There was like something that crossed my mind is, speaking of her being the protagonist.
Yeah.
Feeling like the protagonist. I'm curious if our sensibilities led us to feel one way about her and that other people might watch it and be like, she obviously killed him. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure some people do.
Yeah.
But like part of my ponderance is making her the protagonist from the beginning. Is that enough to help want us to be on her side? Like, are we primed?
Yeah, we are. I think we are.
Be like, that's why I'm like really strong into reasonable doubt with her, because I saw her as a person.
Well, we have a relationship with her. We don't with him.
No, we do not see him.
We get a little bit of him later.
We see him, yes, only in memories.
Yeah, right.
So who knows? Like, we do see them reenact the story, but how can we even know if what they showed us is like a real,
right?
Like, are we watching it? Or are they just like pumping into our brain what might be visualized as they're listening to the conversation?
Right.
We don't even know. Like it's a story. We don't even, we don't know what they're actually showing us. Are they actually showing us the real conversation? And then the visuals would make a difference.
Right.
But like there could be different interpretations.
Well, and they show us different interpretations of stuff. They show us a version, like they do a reenactment with the actors of her hitting him on the head and throwing him off the thing.
Weird.
They do a reenactment of him just jumping. They do they do show us versions of stuff. Yeah. So we can't even really take those memories as like a reliable enactment, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just like what we
because it's interesting. They have that one moment where they are recreating a conversation and they kept being like, you got to be louder until he can hear it.
Yeah.
And they're like, literally the mom's like, I'm not
going to yell because
didn't yell. Yeah. So that is a stupid thing for us to do right now.
Yeah. I didn't yell. So why would I do that? Yeah.
It's just like very interesting. It's like, yeah, but we need to show that it's possible.
Right.
It's like, but that's not what happened. Like, it's a very interesting, like,
it's like, that's not helping you.
That's part of that. I'm like, what is the right thing?
Yeah.
To show that it's possible that thing that was said happened, even though I know that's not how it went.
Yeah.
but if that's like the defense I have to go with,
Yeah.
it's really weird. It's so strange.
Yeah.
That like that because of some of like the way the courts just like work and how we know people are swayed, sometimes they have to be like, we have to go with this angle. You might not believe that that's the right angle, but that is going to be the angle that people will believe.
Yeah.
And you know, that's where some of the tension between like her worldview,
Yeah.
like that, there's a lot of tension in that. Because she's kind of like, she doesn't really give that up.
Yeah.
She like finds evidence to support that he's suicidal because she remembers it.
Right.
And at first I'm like, did she decide to make something up? Until the son was like, oh, I remember that. And
Right.
I'm like, oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
So she is sticking to her worldview.
Yeah.
She's very consistent.
Yeah. Well, a lot to unpack in this film.
Yeah. I
It's
think
really,
it's very interesting.
It's fascinating.
Again, lots to discuss.
Should we rate it?
Yeah. Ratings
Yeah.
next. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
All right. Story.
Story.
I really liked it. I think I give it a 5.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I give it a 5.
Okay. I think I'm going to give it a 4.5. Only because I think this is very nitpicky. Like the stuff, it feels a little, because most of the storytelling and everything was like a little bit messy. I think they were very clean with the way like the son kind of swoops in, tells the right story in the right way and gets her out. Like it seems like that's the thing. There's something too clean about the way that happened, and there's not like the prosecutor does not push back with that one nearly as much. There's something like, I'm like, did he just like do something magical and amazing? You know, it like feels almost
Too
Deus Ex Machina.
convenient.
Like
Yeah.
it's like he found the right story to tell.
Sure.
And like and almost a little too, like it just seems a little too convenient.
Yeah.
Again, very, very
Well, and
nitpicky.
that's a little bit of maybe like what I identify as like the confusion about who's the protagonist, because like everything
Right.
is following her, and then the big game time decision that saves her is him.
I wish it felt a little bit more accidental, like he stumbled onto something.
Yeah.
Rather than like, not that it feels like he necessarily like came up with this perfectly like on purpose. Like it wasn't, but it feels really crafted. It's just like, not only did he, talk about the dog, but he also comes up with this magical story about his dad being like, if the dog dies, you're going to be alone.
Even though the dog anticipates her every move.
So you got to be ready for the dog.
Yeah.
And when I push back, he's like, no, you got to be ready when he dies. You're going to be alone. You're going to be able to make it on your own.
Yeah.
And I knew it was about him. And I'm like, I'm glad. Like, I get it. I get like that was his story. I mean, maybe I'm already doing my unearned moment. Just because like that very, very specific story comes out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. It's connected to the dog, but also like it's just a little bit convenient of a story.
Yeah.
And I know, like, I wish maybe we had heard it before.
Yeah. Well, it lets us know whether or not it's actually real, right? It's like whether did he make it up, or is he just like remembering it all now?
And is that the point?
Yeah, maybe that's the point. I think I'm leaning toward that a bit of that's the point, and that the real game time decision is her decision to kind of like, to some extent, acquiesce, right? To some extent, she's like, I'm gonna just keep doing what I was doing, and even though that means I'm leaving home, like even though I'm leaving my son, I'm letting it go, right?
Yeah.
Not that she has much of a choice, but there's an internal decision that's made.
Right. And I don't think that's again, I think it's very common with these kind of like world changing stories.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not about like the big choices and the big actions that they do in life. That is the story and the change.
Yeah, it's the thoughts, right? It's like, it's all. Like if we were to read a book about it, we would see the inner thoughts.
Yes.
Here, we'd actually get to like read what the thoughts were. Now we have to like.
And I'm glad.
Suppose them.
I think I like it better than if we were just like hearing a constant stream of her
Oh my
thoughts.
God, yeah, that would be little Mrs. Dalloway.
Especially because like I think part of what makes this interesting is like never knowing
Not
whether or
knowing,
not she
yeah.
did it.
Yeah.
Of course, you can do that in a book, even when you see all of her
Sure.
thoughts. But it's not nearly as. If I'm hearing her thoughts, I need to. I want to hear whether or not she did it. Like whether or not at least she believes that she did it.
Sure. Great. 5 for me. 4.5 for you.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think it's pretty like. It's interesting for sure.
Technical.
I'll give it a 4. There was like some weird. There was a couple times where I'm like, it like does that thing where I'm like, it's almost too well shot. I'm like, it almost looks like a home video, and a couple. I don't know if you noticed the same thing.
Yeah,
but like,
I did.
Like some of
something
it
a little bit documentary.
It doesn't feel. Yeah, I mean,
there were some moments that it was even like, wait, what did the camera do that?
yeah. And maybe it's like a French thing. Maybe it's I don't know. But there was a couple points that like I did think, what's happening? Why is this happening?
I like how the camera shakes.
Right.
Yeah.
And it made me, it like took me out more than it like added.
Yeah.
But still pretty good.
Yeah. I think I'd give it a 4.
Yeah. Pretty solid.
Yeah.
Not a lot.
Not much
Mostly
to
enhancing.
complain about.
It was
And the
very-
performances are great.
It wasn't like spectacular cinematography. There's like good cinematography.
Yeah, there's not
It's
like much.
bad.
There's nothing to it. It didn't feel like. Maybe I'm sure there's more to it than I'm expecting.
Very like
but
slice of life where it's like
Yeah.
house, court, nothing's fancy, nothing looks shiny, nothing like their
Right.
outfits don't look. I mean, like, I guess let's not talk about like the robes that.
oh my
people wear in
God.
The French court.
The French court robes.
I'm like, well, that's
They're clowns.
ridiculous.
They're just clowns.
That
Yeah.
does like add to the.
Not only are you wearing these clown robes, but you're like,
You're like,
like
it's
making
buffoonery.
terrible
It is
arguments. Yeah.
so crazy.
Yeah. I think I do have like a little, I always, and this is probably a me thing, but it's like I have a problem, probably ever since you mentioned it like a million years ago, but like the like
ruined something for
car
you?
scenes, like any scene where they're like driving through a car and I'm like, why are they driving so fast? Something terrible is going to happen.
Yes.
Like you're
there
driving
was-
through the French Alps. Why are you driving so quickly?
There
oh
was
my
that
God.
one
And
scene
it's
where
like,
they were
and
driving
there's
through and I was
yes,
like, oh my God,
and I'm like,
something's gonna
why are you showing me this shot of like the headlights going through this like windy road
like has a steep-
Oh my God, why are you showing me that? You're showing me that
stress.
makes me think something terrible is going to happen. Nothing happens.
No, it keeps the tension for sure.
It keeps the tension, but it feels a little manufactured
Yeah, that's fair.
to do it
It's
that
very
way.
metaphorical. Ooh,
Yeah,
they're
and
driving down this winding, steep
it ends up
road.
distracting me because then I take it literally. You know, like I'm like,
you think something
I think
literally is gonna
something's you're gonna hit someone, or I was like, what's gonna happen?
Yeah,
You're gonna like,
and that's obviously not the point.
yeah.
Like
It is. It's not supposed to be the point, and that just might be a me
Maybe an
neurosis
American
thing.
thing.
And I'm just like, don't show me the car driving. It's gonna be a problem. It's like watching people eat and like overstuff their mouth on stage. Like, don't eat real food in large
You need to have
quantities.
tiny bites.
I am ready to jump up there and do the Heimlich because I am so stressed out about you stuffing that Kit Kat bar in your mouth.
Yes, definitely your own neuroses for sure.
Okay, rewatch value.
Okay, so this one's interesting because it is stressful and is upsetting.
Yeah,
There
and
are a couple moments that are. I mean, like
I think
there's a lot of upsetting moments.
it's like for me, it's like I do want to rewatch it.
I'm very
except
interested.
then I think about the dog scene and I'm like, absolutely not. I don't. I mean, at least now knowing, spoiler, that the dog survives,
The dog survives. Thank God.
but like not knowing whether the dog was going to survive the experiment because there's like this
And I'm
incredibly well-trained dog.
yeah, very well trained.
Pretending to be like on the death's doorstep, and I am it was so upsetting. Like I'm again screaming at the TV, like why did you do that?
Yeah.
Like like the au pair lady with the kid is like, okay, explain. And I was like, yeah, explain, Daniel. What are you doing? Poisoning your poor dog. And of course I'm like looking at my dog.
Yes, and
we like, oh my God.
We recently got
just like,
a puppy, and just like not very long ago. We've had him for like 5 months.
Yeah.
And
oh, makes me so sad. I was so upset.
it does. I mean, that certainly like increases the feelings around that for sure. And that's really hard. It was really hard to watch. I'm like, that dog better not.
I mean, and honestly, like, it is very stressful, and it's like the great relief of knowing that he survives probably makes it easier to watch again. And I would be curious to see, as far as like telling other people to watch it, I'd be like, not to give a spoiler,
You shouldn't even though.
but the dog survives.
Don't do that.
It's very upsetting, and it's like I would have liked maybe to have known. Maybe I don't know.
You wanted a trigger warning?
I don't know. I got one for Sixth Sense. Did I ever tell you that?
Yes, I think.
I knew how Sixth Sense ends before I went to see it because I was like 11, and I was like, I don't like scary movies. My aunt's like, do you want to know how it ends? And I was like, yeah.
That's terrible.
And then
That's
she
the whole
did.
movie.
Yeah, and then I watched it, and it's still an excellent film.
I'm sure it is, but then you didn't get the real experience.
You're right. I didn't. You're right.
That's why I'm against spoilers. Not that it can't be a good movie with the spoiler.
I just really didn't want to be scared.
It is that's the experience.
I know that. I
And
know.
you just
I would
missed
have.
out.
I would have been. I can do it better now.
Yeah. But I think it would have been better to be like, yeah, it's going to be scary.
But it's worth it at the end.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
And it's
Probably.
like, if that means like, if you don't want to be scared now, you should wait till you're ready to be scared.
Yeah.
Not like, let me ruin the magic of this movie, because The Sixth Sense really is magic because of the twist.
Yeah.
It makes
Excellent.
the whole movie.
Yeah.
Not that it can't be a good movie. Without it, it just, that the first time watching it, that realization is still one of the biggest realizations ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like finding out
I never got it.
Hans was the bad guy
In Frozen.
I'm like,
well,
because we just
I didn't
rewatched
see
and I
that
was
coming.
like, wow, Disney really did
They
that.
really did well
Wow.
keeping that hidden for sure.
I
Yeah.
was shocked the first time I saw that. I'm like,
Yeah.
Disney, how could you?
Yeah, we'll have to do like a twist lesson. Like, how do you do a good twist? We'll have to like really like
could figure it
dive.
out
I know
ourselves.
we have to like dive into that.
Anatomy of a Twist.
Anatomy of a Twist, the sequel.
So did we give?
Did we give it? Oh, I didn't.
No, we didn't. So rewatch.
So rewatch. I think I'd probably have to give it a 3.5.
Wow.
I do want to see it again. I just like I'm not excited about the dog.
I'm gonna give it a 4.5. It is hard to watch that. I think knowing again they give you those relief moments,
Yeah.
and that allows it to be rewatched
Right.
in a way that like there are things that I'm like, I would never choose to rewatch that.
Yeah.
Even if it's good storytelling, it is so upsetting. I don't want to watch it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I'll ever watch. I don't even really remember what happens in Braveheart, but I like remember being so upset that I'm like, never again.
Oh, really? Oh, I like that movie.
I might.
It
but
is
like,
very upsetting.
I saw it as a child, and I just
Really,
remember being
really
like,
upsetting, yeah.
really, really upset.
Really
by
upsetting.
It. There's like some movies that I'm like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
I'll never
Yeah,
watch
it's
that
bad.
again. Even if it's a good movie. If
And in
it's-
the end, like even I
I don't
think
think I'm ever going to watch. I don't want to watch Hereditary ever again.
nah.
I just like, it's very good.
Yeah,
But it is
I
like
do not want to see that.
very upsetting.
And I think for this one, I especially want to do a little bit of reading on what the French court's like and watch the court scenes. That's like what I want to do. That's like where I'm.
It makes me want to like dive into a lot of things.
Yeah, I really want to know how that
Interesting
is.
story.
Yeah,
And I want to rewatch now with all the knowledge that we have at the end and
yeah, yeah.
see like
Where does
little
that come
pieces
through?
of it.
oh, she lied there, or she's telling this story. Yeah.
Or like, do I now feel differently about this interaction than I did before? Yeah, I'm very interested. And like we said, in telling other people to rewatch it, I would be like, yes,
yeah, you should see it.
I want to, yeah, you should. I want to talk about it.
I think you should see it because I want to talk about it. Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting.
Same.
A couple of upsetting moments, but they're tolerable.
Yeah. So 3.5 for me, 4.5 for you.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to superlatives.
Let's do it. So Oscar moment.
Oscar-worthy moment.
We already talked about the trained dog, so
He's
an honorary
Oscar trained dog.
Yeah, because he's. I mean, like that.
I think I want to give it to the dog.
You do it.
I'm going to give it to the dog because that was so believable. I don't know how you train a dog to look that way, but it did well.
And if you like replaced it with a dummy for like 3 seconds, like
really,
whatever
you did to make that work was great.
I believed every part of that dog getting sick, being like comatose and then vomiting. And like, I believed every piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was well done. Like the dog did well.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah.
That dog better get lots of pets and treats.
I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a moment that sticks out to me, as like kind of relief in a lot of the frustration. And there's like a few moments of like relief from the frustration, but there was a moment that I thought like, that really stood out to me. When the prosecutor brings up the books, he's like, let's listen to this passage. I feel like killing my husband is essentially what the passage is.
Right.
And one of the lawyers on the defense team. So not even the person that has been speaking most of all, but like just one of the team members who we've seen before. Yeah. She's like, excuse me, this is a part of the book that it is not the main character. It is a side, like it's who she's like showing going through a full mental breakdown. Yeah. Like she's not condoning this. She's like, that's ridiculous to think that has anything to do with the situation. And just like the reaction and the like, both, like I was surprised at how like real I believed her reaction. She was so frustrated, but so like I'm being as professional as I can right now. Yeah. And because like she doesn't get a lot of moments in the movie.
That character is a fan of her books.
And I was like, I'm sure she did her research. Yeah. I'm sure like within the, like she also looked into the book. Like, like it's just like, I was very intrigued by that. Yeah. I was like, it just was a shining moment of like, okay, yeah, this is
sanity.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my God. Like always nice to see when I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody has to be the voice of reason. Somebody has to speak up and be like, that's stupid. That's dumb. I just like want to hear it. Yeah. Cause so often you stop yourself from being like, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. Yeah. I'm so annoyed by what you're saying. I know. Because like, it's not super helpful generally to do it. Right. But it is so like to not hear anyone do it. It like frustrates me. Yeah. To not be like, guys, this is ridiculous. Like listening to any like videos of Congress having any conversation about anything.
It's like, what are you even saying?
That's you have not answered the question that you've been asked.
Yeah. And that actually, that makes me wonder too. And
why are people not screaming? I know. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I would just like want to explode. And I just like, it's a very satisfying moment. But I think that actress does so like it is like so real. And so I just love it. So I loved it so much. And I was like, she's good. Yeah. I want to see more of her. Like, I'm like, it just like, I was like, she's a good actor. She like, really.
And later she's like drunk at the Mexican restaurant.
Yeah. I liked her a lot.
There is, that makes me wonder now that you mentioned that it's, and I'll do some more research on the French legal system, but like, I wonder if shows of passion just go a long way. Cause like the whole time
I'm sure
the prosecutor is like, you know, he's weaving the story and he's got that showmanship. And it's like the one time that the wife is this very by the book German stoicism.
She doesn't have any emotional
She doesn't do any outbursts. And to have like this prosecutor be like, no, like finally has this outburst
most of the time.
Yeah. And I wonder if that was like really actually in the verisimilitude of it, like that was effective for the jury to be like, oh,
I would think so.
She had a moment. Yeah.
Within that, the world that they've set up where it's like, we're watching these like passionate, like, believe this.
Yeah.
And someone's like, that's ridiculous. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Like, it is like, there's something like, oh, thank God.
Oh, that's so satisfying.
Okay.
And it worked.
Because like, if you're not hearing both sides, it's so easy to be like,
well, they obviously don't care about.
I guess they don't. Maybe that's the thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that's true.
Right.
They don't have anything to say about it. I know it doesn't feel right to me, but no one else is saying it.
Yeah.
So like that would make sense to me.
Yeah.
But that moment was it was like it's a tiny little moment, but very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Made a big difference.
Unearned moment.
Yeah. I'm going to go just with how perfect the story was that the son told. I was like, and also I remember a time that my dad essentially told me that he was going to be gone and dead one day. And so I think he probably killed himself.
Yeah.
Like, a little convenient, especially since if we had heard that interaction before and now we're like we didn't, like, it's like a throwaway thing.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, now we're interpreting it. Even like when we find out that he's got the dog in his mind.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I remember that because like,
it was a
I
whole
remember
thing.
Dad said like these weird things about the dog dying and I hated it.
Yeah.
Like, and I thought, like I didn't think anything of it at the time. And now I'm thinking like, but not connecting it to the conversation.
Right.
And being like, yeah, when I thought about it, that even that thing, it was more like, there's something like not quite, I don't know. It was like it
just got a little bit out of nowhere.
So
Yeah.
perfect. And like the prosecution had like tried to say asked like well, couldn't it have been this? And he's like, no. Like it was like, and it was like, shut him down. I was like, it just felt a little too nice.
Yeah. All right. I think my unearned also revolves around Daniel, the son.
Okay.
Just, I think generally his dialogue was like a little bit sophisticated.
He's a smart kid.
Yeah, like and the way he was comporting himself, like the emotions he was showing and how he was interacting with the adults around him, he was acting like an adult. And not that that's necessarily out of the realm of possibility. That could have been part of the thing. It rang untrue. It rang like someone who has seen a lot of actors act and behaving that way.
Maybe. I mean, like, but the ability for that child to even do that.
Yeah.
And to do it kind of believably.
Yeah.
Kind of almost tells me that like he almost is like that.
Maybe.
And that like, I guess like that's part of it is I do think that child was a pretty good actor.
Yeah.
In that I was like, wow, you have these like high level thoughts and it's like,
yeah,
I couldn't even imagine, like I wouldn't have even thought that a kid, like that actor would be able to like, I mean, he had a couple moments where he like had like these emotions where he's like just like on the verge of tears.
Yeah.
And, like there's a very complicated feeling there. And I don't know if that was like coached or acted.
Just him
but
or,
there was that one, I mean, he was really, I was like,
yeah,
oh, he's like really conflicted on how he feels right now. And I think that's like so brilliant.
Yeah.
But also I'm like, I'm on the team that like, he's went through a huge traumatic event and his parents, especially his dad, was mentally ill, which forces a kid to like parent the parent.
Yeah. It
really puts children in that place much faster than they are like should be. And I don't know. It maybe
I think maybe I would have. It didn't feel like 11. I guess he's supposed to be 11 years old. He didn't look 11 to me.
Sure. I guess like I'm not really. Maybe like they could have just used whatever age he was. If that was
I don't know. There's something.
I don't know. It
just
felt,
rang untrue to me.
Maybe it was like. I guess it didn't feel untrue as much as it like felt like maybe an exaggeration of a reality or like just like a story,
something extraordinary.
Yeah. I mean, certainly he was an extraordinary kid in many ways.
Yes.
But I also, I saw that like, the like forced to be an adult too soon. And maybe that was like exaggerated a bit, just to like show it in the story. Cause it's like hard to, it's hard to like do it in a short amount of time.
Sure.
That element of it rang true enough that I'm like, even if it's not, I don't know, it didn't bother me age wise.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I think it just would have
about
like
his age. Like I didn't think about like 11 being the thing. Not that I think that would have changed much, but I just
like even just
believed
calling
him
it
as
a 13 would have helped me, I think.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. I mean, like maybe.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me, I guess, but I didn't. When you said that, if you had asked me what age he was, I would have probably said like 12, 13, 14, even. I wouldn't have necessarily said 11. But
that's
again,
all I've
there's
got.
like a little bit of wise beyond your
a
years
little bit. And it's, I mean, that actor is very good. I mean, that
He was very
particularly that moment when he's like asking for the help, I was like, oh my God. It's like, but help me.
I just like when his mom was like coming home from something and like he was like emotional. Like that moment, like I was like, he's like, oh yeah, I'm happy. Like that kind of like happy, but I'm like kind of like,
I was afraid.
It's a lot. If like if there's fear, there's sadness, there's like excitement, but like there were so many things happening at once. I'm like, I don't know how you're doing that. I don't know what direction you got right there to like get you to that place, but it was good. It was correct.
Yeah.
So I don't know that. So he sold me because the actor was good. I think that part of that, it sold me on that. I was like, well, if he's doing it at that age, then my kid could do it. You know what I mean? Like, because there's sometimes where it happens where the acting is bad and you're like, well, no kid would do that. No kid would say that. It feels weird when he says that.
Right.
But I don't know.
All right. Next up, most infuriating courtroom moment.
I mean, are you going to take the therapist? Is that?
I think so. The therapist is like so frustrating. Although I think I was going to say like there's a few times when the judge like allows anytime the judge allowed the prosecutor to do the thing that he was doing where he's like, well, I don't know how we're supposed to understand about blah, blah, blah unless we hear about this thing. And the judge is like, yeah, me too. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? That would never fly.
No, it'd be like, that's irrelevant. Like, can you show me that that's relevant?
Right.
How is this relevant? Prove to me that it's relevant before you do this thing.
Right.
That's what I would hope to hear.
Yeah. Cause it like really set the judge up as being like on the prosecutor's side.
Feel like that. They did. I think there was like,
there were a handful of moments, and I think it really does fall down to just not understanding how the process works. But
that, and just like I think they did give those moments to the judge a lot more, like with the prosecutor, to like make us think that it was like stacked up against them. When there was a couple moments, especially at the end, we see these moments, like especially when the prosecutor or the defense was like. You let him tell that story. Let me tell a story. And she's like, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, see, she's not on one side.
Yeah.
This is just how it goes. Like, I guess to your point, like it is part of a beat about the misunderstanding, but also I think they were doing it on purpose, like just showing us more instances where
of her allowing him to do the thing.
Yeah.
And we're all being like, oh my God.
On his side. And it's not.
Yeah.
That's like very frustrating. And, keeps the tension going. If we kept seeing it back and forth,
it wouldn't. There would have been no tension.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think, there were some of those moments. But the therapist, I think, was the most frustrating.
Yeah.
I would have been like,
what the hell is this?
Like, was horrible.
Yeah.
He'd never met this woman before. He's just basing it off of, he couldn't possibly know.
Right. Yeah.
And the thing is, it's troubling that he can't even say that he doesn't know.
Right. That
he's just speculating.
Yeah.
He's like, nope, she's awful.
It's like, we arranged for him to come off the drugs little by little. Why would he just like come off of it all at once? You mean he didn't tell you that he came off of his drugs all at once? Because he did. Like, what? What?
Yeah. And like, for her to be, I think it was I'm glad that she was like, have you never had a patient that said one thing to you and just like, did a different thing? Like,
yeah. It was so weird.
He's like, no, I know him. I knew him and that's wrong. And I'm like, ooh, that's gross.
Ooh, yeah.
So that's very frustrating. Yes, that was a very frustrating moment. I think one of the times I got the most frustrated is when they're talking to the reporter.
Yeah.
And who like comes and interviews the wife at the beginning and keeps trying to press into her. It's very, very leading, very badgering.
Yeah.
Horrible. That like, it would like, you felt like she was hitting on you because she's bisexual and she's had affairs with women before. You felt in that moment, right, that she was trying to cheat on her husband right then, right?
Yeah.
And she's like,
no, I didn't.
It did not feel like that to me.
Yeah.
It couldn't have been. It could have, but it didn't feel like that.
Yeah.
So it could have, like, it was like, but the way he was like asking
it was
questions,
really, I was like, is this a weird misogyny thing and homophobic thing? Like, is that what this is?
It was like very adamant. He's like, no, but that's what it is. But obviously she was lonely. Obviously she was hitting on you. Obviously you were attractive. Listening back, you can't think right now, like, it's like,
listen to her
how did
laugh
it feel
like
in that moment?
She's
It didn't feel
avoiding
like
all
that.
the questions.
Now listening back, doesn't it feel like that? No, not really. It sounds like a woman who wanted company.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was interested. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, but like, that's not what it was.
Right.
Just like any human interaction, you were getting along, could be friends, could be more, like, that doesn't mean it's like, she's like, he kept being like, she was seducing you, right? No, it did not feel like seduction. But listening back, could have been seduction, right?
The whole thing, that was like near the beginning too, where I'm like, how does this work? How does prosecution work in France? I don't get it.
Yeah, because I was just shocked that the judge was like, she answered the question.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like very clearly badgering. It was like, I'm like, you are horrible. That was very frustrating to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're just saying the things that you want the jury to believe.
Right.
And you're just like saying them enough times, hoping that they'll
assign it to her.
See, she's lying. See, she's not even telling, like, you're trying to like, I hate it.
Ugh, it's horrible.
That was very frustrating.
Finally, most potent sexual tension with the wife. And for context, they're just like a few people and instances, because it's like becomes clear that she's like bisexual and she's had these affairs, and you learn about like the lawyer, but there's like some moments sprinkled in where I was like, are they hitting on each other? Is that what this is? I think for me, because there's a few moments, there's like, of course, with the like, yeah, maybe that's what was happening at the beginning with the reporter.
Yeah, but it did not feel like that. I wouldn't say at the beginning.
Yeah.
I didn't get the sense. I was like, I'm not sure what's happening. Something weird
was happening, but I didn't know what it was.
It didn't necessarily feel like seduction. Like listening back, I'm like, maybe she was interested, like generally interested.
Yeah.
And maybe she was like putting it out there, but she wasn't being like overt.
Right.
She wasn't like.
There was reasonable doubt for sure.
Yeah, like she could have not been. She could have like.
Yeah. And then there's the lawyer, but the one that got me was like near the end when she asks that like au pair escort lady with Daniel to like if she's gonna stay, because she comes home late and she's like a little drunk,
right?
Presumably, she's just won the court case. She comes home and whatever her name is, I don't remember now.
I don't know.
Marge.
Wow,
Marge.
That weird
Marge. But she's like, oh, are you going to stay tonight? And Marge is like, no, I'll leave you too. And I was like, It was like after this whole court case where there's been all this thing, I was like, did you just hit on her? Am I making that up? I don't know. I'm feeling the tension. So yeah, it was with Marge. So I was like, I felt the most sexual tension right there at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm tempted to say, like, when she like touches the lawyer's face, I think that's like the most clear.
Yeah. Because there's also like, oh, are they going to kiss?
Yes. And they don't.
And they don't. Yeah.
Which is very interesting. I'm glad that like they didn't make that a thing. Like, that's not the story. That's not the story. It's like part of her world, part of her life, but it's not the story. So they didn't.
Well, I would even say that there's probably more tension in like one of the earlier scenes where they're like standing outside drunk, drinking beers.
I'm like, wasn't going to, there was tension only in the fact that I'm like, is it going to happen? Like, we're finally going to like do it, and they don't.
Yeah.
And so there's tension because they get closest there. But I think there's definitely tension. I don't know about sexual tension, but like, there's that one scene where I think they're smoking, and she's like, do you remember how we met? Do you remember, like, do you remember me? From, like, when we first, like, am I different from then? And I was like, did something happen before? Like, that made me question. I'm like, are you bringing this up because you're questioning your relationship right now?
Right.
Because essentially, like, it's unclear what their relationship is. It's just like, he's the only lawyer she knows, is what he says, or what she says. Yeah. But like, we get these little snippets of like, oh, do you remember me from before? Like, we don't get the we don't know. We have no idea how they met, where they met, when they met. Yeah. I don't remember, at least. It wasn't very clear. It wasn't very important, I guess. Right. But it did maybe question. I'm like, was that another? Because she had multiple, at least like flings, she said, that he knew about, that the husband knew about. Right. It wasn't just like the one. But that's the one affair was the only one that was like a real affair. Right. But I'm like, was he one of those? Did they have some sort of relation? Did they just like had met and like had, because like he seemed to like also
dig her. There was like, something felt very unrequited. Like it was, she got away from him.
Right. Yeah, which is weird because they don't do a lot. There's not a lot in that. It just like kind of lives there. Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah. It's like paints this whole vague picture in the background. It's really with a lot of depth.
But especially at that moment where they're smoking and like discuss.
Do you remember me?
Do you remember? Am I different?
Yeah.
That question.
That's really intimate question.
What does that mean?
Yeah, and I think that struck me by surprise because it feels like, oh, do you remember when we met? Oh my God, yeah. And they were like really sexy and young, and I'll never forget. It just like, it goes in a different direction. Yeah. Like you expect it to be kind of like, oh, remember, I'm going to seduce you. It
could be a sexy thing.
But it ends up being like, am I a different person now? Like it becomes so very deep and intimate and dark.
Does that become one in those situations? Mm-hmm. Like, can those things happen together? Obviously, like people connect over these very intense things. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if like they had some sort of chemistry and something happened between them within the course of it. I'm glad storytelling, like that's not what the story is. Yeah. So we don't like complicate things with that, because that ends up being, oh, well now can we try, like, like it makes us ask questions beyond like, it just like makes us question things that I don't think, that's not the point. We don't need to be like, is this a thing? but it does show that there's like real things and real feelings and real relationships happening even in this like very professional, very intense interaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also like that question could mean so many things all at once. Yeah. And maybe she asked it with intention for one thing and it became something else, or she didn't even know what she meant when she asked it. You know, there's so many. It's a good question. It was a good moment. That I was like, what's going on? It feels like there's some tension, like some sexual tension, but also it is like so much more than that.
Shall we wrap up? Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us for this episode of Two Grooms, One Plot. Follow us wherever you can. All of the socials and on the YouTube is where you see the videos. If you haven't seen our wonderful outfits, please go to the YouTube and watch.
And Instagram, we post.
And we do post on Instagram our fit check. And then you can follow subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And yeah, we'll see you again here next time. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much. I'm Pavi Proczko, and remember, if you don't know the truth, that's okay. You can just decide.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Colin Funk, and remember, if you actually kill the dog, we're not going to watch the movie again.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Two Grooms, One Plot, a Pavitas Productions project, hosted by Colin Funk and Pavi Proczko. This podcast was produced by Chicago Podcast Studio. Our opening cartoon was created by Gloriu, and our theme song was composed by me, Pavi Proczko. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite listening platform. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Two Grooms, One Plot for updates on new episodes and behind-the-scenes content. If you have any feedback, comments, concerns, or kudos, you can email us at twogroomsoneplot@gmail.com. Please rate and review us wherever you can. It would help us out a bunch. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next time.